Hello, Coach.
Stacy, Scott, Wag,
Welcome.
you.
Thanks for being back with us. We'll go ahead and get started. We have Scott Wyckoff with us today, new guest this week. Scott, do you want to start us off with a few questions?
First,
Sure.
first time, long time, Scott.
Yeah. How you doing, Coach?
Oh, good to see you.
Good, good. What makes, I mean, you've been a part of it now for a long time. What makes this rivalry so special with Hopkins?
I mean, there's a number of things. I think from a player's perspective, you certainly when you start following sport as a young kid, Hopkins and Navy are two teams that stand out to you. From a competitive standpoint, Hopkins consistently has always been near the top of the sport, so that just heightens your senses a little bit. Um, both schools have tremendous followings in our sport. Lacrosse is so important to both of these institutions in general, and I think that just adds to the atmosphere. And it's a local thing for us. It's something that would I would expect if the weather is good, like it's been the past couple of days on Saturday night. I would expect just the local lacrosse community to come out and enjoy a great college lacrosse game between two teams who are trying to continue to prove themselves.
And you talk about folks coming out to a game for you guys in this game. Important that you play a game like this really before you get into the gauntlet of what will be the Patriot League season.
Well, I feel like we're in the gauntlet right now, but
Right.
you can argue there's still a gauntlet ahead of us. Yeah, I mean, I look playing great out of conference competition has always been at the top of my agenda. The kids want to play in these big games, just from an experience standpoint. Kids come here because we play a really good schedule and give them an opportunity to play those, national brands in our sport. But also, it just prepares you for what you're going to see later in the season. If you want to try and win a championship, playing games like this forces you to prepare at a higher level, and then it forces you certainly to play and execute at a level that you're going to need to if you want to compete for championships later in the season.
A lot of similarities between how you guys have started the season. Uh, both a pair of losses, but this Hopkins team, their two losses, much like you guys early on, only by a few goals, and they seem like they're also trying to find their stride before they get things going.
Yeah, look. I think it's still early. I've often said, tell me April 1st where you stand, and that will really kind of clarify what the competition is. Every team out there, us and Hopkins and others, we're still trying to get the pieces right, get certain people to play the way we need them to play, and really still form the team. And that's the exciting part. It's two teams that I think are on the upward trend. We certainly have our challenges, both them and us, both of us with some injuries, but also just challenges with the way the season goes. But I do see both of these teams, us and them, competing for their conference championships as the season goes along.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Wags?
Joe, I don't mean to bring up a sore subject, but face-offs, what has kind of been the message? What has been the strategy here in the days since what happened on Saturday,
I love that you
Friday?
bring up the fact that you don't want to bring up a sore subject. So that was a good precursor. I do appreciate that about you, Pegs. Listen, it certainly did not work out for us on Friday night with the strategies that we deployed. We were outmanned at the face-off X in particular, and then the counter strategies that we had were not successful. So we're continuing to refine those and think of other ways that we can be creative to try and make it more of a team event. The reality is it's just not easy. There's really good players at those positions with the schedule that we face. So the message has been that each individual guy has to continue to improve, maybe refine some technique. And we've certainly spent a lot of time practicing a number of different scenarios this week at the face-off X and just the face-off game in general. So we'll continue to improve there. And the positive is once we do get healthy, having these strategies and having some experience, whether good or bad, is only going to help us as the season continues. Because there'll be a moment when we are 100% healthy where things may not be going well at that face-off X, and we won't hit the panic button because we would have been in that situation already.
Is there a chance that you could get either Zach Hayashi or Colin Shadoans back this week?
There is a chance. Colin is probably closer than Zach. I would say he's probably listed as probable. Zach is listed as doubtful this week. That will continue, but Colin is closer. The reality is, look, the kid had a concussion, and we've got to be really smart about his return. And I'm never going to push a kid past his comfort zone, especially with an injury and no less an injury like that. So we will take the medical staff's advice and recommendation, and we'll prepare for a game with him and a game without him.
I know you went up against a good guy Friday night against Lehigh. What are you seeing out of Logan Callahan, who looks like he's winning 58%?
Yeah, he's winning 58% against maybe the hardest schedule to date, and some really good face-off personnel that he's faced. I think he's improved tremendously from last year. He's very quick to the ball. He's strong when he gets the ball in his stick. He exits really well. And their second kid, Joe Hobbit, is a freshman who is playing really well, in addition to him. So they give you a two-headed monster there. And then you've got to deal with their wing personnel and the skill that they bring all over the field in the face-off game. It'll be a big challenge for us. We know that, but we're doing the best we can to prepare.
All right, thanks.
Scott?
Coach, despite the tough loss to Lehigh, it seemed like you guys really showed the personality of this team, though they were struggling at times. They had fight all the way to the end.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me here at Navy, but it definitely doesn't surprise me with this team. I've said from the beginning that I really like this team, and I feel like we are finally at a point where we've got that team culture and that team atmosphere and the commitment to each other down. When you're in a tough moment, when you're down pretty good to a really good Lehigh team and their strategy is working, the fear is that you're not going to be able to march to come back. And we certainly made it interesting there as best we could in the second half, given the circumstances. We played 15 minutes of offense vice their 33 minutes of defense that we faced in the offensive boxes. It's a dramatic number that to show the fight that we had is really impressive on our guys. So thanks for pointing that out.
And how do you like the way that Dan's holding up, especially against a team like that? I saw 9 saves and the ball in his end throughout the game. How do you like where he is right now coming into the Hopkins game?
Yeah, he's been consistent. He's been consistently good. Some days he's been very good. He probably had his best game of the year when we played Penn State, maybe his best game of his career. Just statistically and ability to save the ball. So there's days he's playing as well as anybody, and even on his days that he's not at his best, he's still been pretty good. So we need him to be even better. If we're gonna flip this script here with the circumstances that we may be under.
Also, with a game like this happening during spring break week, kind of nice to kind of have your team's whole attention. You don't have to worry about the things that they have to do all day long normally.
Well, Scott, it's interesting you say that because we just came off the practice field and we feel like the worst team that's ever played lacrosse today. And as a staff, we were joking that you take midshipmen out of their routine and, all hell breaks loose. While they were somewhat engaged, it's typical around here. Routine, while it may frustrate the mids at certain points in their careers here, they don't realize how beneficial it is to them. So I don't have any concern that it's going to impact the way that we play on Saturday night. But I've been around here long enough to now realize that I can't hit the panic button when we're just a little bit off on the practice field, given the fact that they're not in cyber dynamics or cyber nuclear physics at 10 a.m. They're on the practice field trying to pick up a ground ball. It's a little bit different than last week compared to this week for these guys. So,
thanks.
You're welcome.
Hey, Coach, last night the men's basketball team, attended the women's basketball tournament at our place, supporting the women's team, and I know you're planning on taking the lacrosse team over to Washington, D.C. to the American Navy men's basketball game tomorrow night. How important is it for these teams to support one another.
I mean, to me, that's everything that we're doing here, you know, and not just us. Like, we're blessed to be in such a great environment. We've got 36 sports that I truly believe the players, the kids, the students, the coaches care about one another. We all want to see each other do well. You know, just in our building here, we see football and basketballs often, and we've become very friendly with their staffs. But from our kids' perspective, they deserve this experience to go and cheer for their peers in a championship environment. It's also a learning experience for them. It's an opportunity to see young men their age compete for a championship. You know, I used Sunday's game that the hoops team played as an example for our team, and just how to be resilient, how to be poised, how to play under pressure. I mean, heck, our point guard, he's as poised, and he's got an unbelievable basketball IQ. It's remarkable what not only he did on Sunday, but what that team did to go on the road, number one team in the conference, go up, go down, go up again, go down, and then figure out a way towards the end to win. There's so many storylines that I can pull from just that game on Sunday that we will use to try and just teach to our young men, you know, teach the young men about competition and playing together and playing under pressure. To me, there's no better model, there's no better classroom than to watch kids your age, your friends, compete for a championship. And then you throw in the fact that, you know, it's fun. You know, it's just fun to be around March Madness and feel like you're a little bit a part of it. And you know, this is the best time of year, you know, for a sports fan.
I know that we play Hopkins every year, but they're in a unique situation in that they have now taken on a goalkeeper that we're also incredibly familiar with in Luke Stott. Do we have a little bit of a leg up? Does he have a leg up on us? Because he's also seen us for 4 years too. I mean, it's a unique situation sometimes to play a grad transfer at another school that we've seen him for 4 years.
I don't think it helps one team either way. You know, there's points in his career when he was at Loyola that he was extremely successful against us that may give him confidence. There's also points during his career where we found success. So I would imagine it balances it out. But my guess is that just like we're trying to focus on us, the Hopkins team and their staff, they're trying to focus on them because, you know, to the point earlier with Scott and I's conversation, it still is early. You know, it still is early, and they're trying to get him, and he personally is trying to play at his best. And if our shooters start thinking they've got it all figured out against the goalie, then, well, I hope that day comes, but I'm not sure we're there yet.
Yeah. I know you've touched a little bit on Will Goers and Ponzio, but how impressive is it to have a young freshman kind of try and put the team on his shoulders? Ponzio ends up with 5 goals and an assist last week. Both he and Will have had at least a point in every game this season. Matt Haley's the only other player that's done that. You don't necessarily, sometimes you don't get that opportunity as a freshman here, certainly, but to have two that are not only having that opportunity, but taking advantage of it, what does that say about those two young guys?
I mean, you know, they're both very talented. Like I've said earlier in time here, Will is slowly assimilating to this place and becoming the human being that we need him to become, and the midshipman that this place deserves from him, and he deserves to be. And I think as that continues, his play is only going to get incrementally better. Uh, Different than Will, Jack Ponzio from day one here has been a leader and has done all the right things on and off the field. And while his play has stood out at times and his consistency is impressive, what is most impressive to me is that he is truly one of the leaders of this team. Just has that natural leadership ability that this place demands and brings out in people. And sometimes it takes a little longer to get to that point for young men, most of the time, truthfully. But for this young boy, I tell you, he's as good as a leader as this place is going to see, and we're blessed to have him. As a freshman, and those things start to come to the forefront as he starts off his career.
Wags?
Well, I was going to ask you about with both Flaherty and Ponzio showing that they can score. Do you think you're putting teams in a bind as to who to poll? And do you think that teams may double poll those two midfielders?
Yeah, I mean, I hope we are. I think it's if I'm playing against us, I'm certainly thinking about it. And but also now you've got some different threats at attack, so it's just we could be a little bit of a matchup challenge for some teams because there's some guys down there that you may consider short sticking, but you second guess yourself, because we've got a little bit more of a dodging presence below the goal. The hope has always been that we can put teams in that bind and force them to decide where they're going to try and match up. Whether they get the pole or not, I don't think either one of those guys shies away from it. Jack has certainly proven, both Jack, Ponzio, and Flaherty, but Ponzio more specifically has proven that he can handle a pole. He actually likes dodging against a pole a little bit better. So hopefully the Hopkins guys are listening to that and they just throw the pole on him. But he doesn't mind it. As a freshman to be able to handle a pole in Division I lacrosse is pretty impressive. So, but yeah, I do think we're at that point now where we could be a little bit of a matchup decision or challenge for certain people when they're trying to game plan for us.
So, just out of curiosity, who did Lehigh poll? Did they poll Flaherty? Is that why Ponzio got loose?
They switched it up. Yeah, I mean, Ponzio threw the pole about half the night. I think after the first, maybe second quarter, he got the pole. The way you play offense nowadays, most teams don't become as matchup conscious later in the possession because there's so much picking and body movement. With ball movement, you're going to get a matchup that you like. So at the trigger of the offense, the start of it, he may see the pole, but because Kenny Brochard does such a good job of putting people in places, he'll eventually get the short stick if he wants it later in the possession. But to have him coming out of the box against a pole, that doesn't stall our offense. We'll attack it regardless if he's got a pole or a short stick on him.
I wanted to ask you about a kid at Hopkins. He's their leading scorer, Russell Melendez. I don't know when he committed to Marquette, but I got to feel like you at some level were involved with his recruitment before you came to Navy.
Yeah, I recruited Russell pretty heavily. His mom cried on his visit because she was very upset that her son was most likely going to commit to Marquette. She was a Loyola girl and knew Steve Wojciechowski, who's a Severna Park guy at the time, and Steve was the basketball coach out there. And I called Wojo. I said, "Listen, pal, I need your help. I got a mom crying, and she knows your sister because his sister went to Loyola." So Coach Wojo comforted the mom. Well, I took Russell around campus, and he committed after that. I will tell you the fun fact is I know he likes rainbow goldfish because that was the snack we put around campus. So I may leave a trail of rainbow goldfish, maybe towards like the midline or off to the sideline so he can just hunt those down and try not to be a nuisance for us on the offensive end. But Russell's a great kid. We've had some fun exchanges the past couple of years competing with each other. We go to the same barber. And when we beat him last year, he made sure that a haircut was on the arm for Russell. He wasn't. I didn't ask. He just left some money for me and made sure that I got a free haircut. So I'm hoping to get tidied up maybe on Monday morning on Russell Melendez.
Yeah, he's got an impressive head of hair, Russell.
Well, I know he doesn't need a haircut. I don't want to break any rules, so I'm not gonna gamble with him. But he did the right thing, so it was pretty good on him.
Well, what can you say about what he's become? I mean, he's become a pretty dangerous player for a high-level team against high-level competition and is putting up points. And, what can you say about the player he's become? He transfers to Hopkins and he's becomes an All-American.
Yeah, he's a great player. I think he was a kid who was a little bit underlooked in high school, and that's why we were lucky to grab him at Marquette. But there was something about him. He had this burst, he had this energy, and just this confidence about him. And I think when he was now put in an environment, probably being closer to home, that he felt a little bit more comfortable. that just allowed him to blossom, and I've seen an incremental growth in his ability. And he is certainly as good of a player as Hopkins has, and maybe one of the best players in that league. And certainly that puts him in a place nationally where he's up there. I'm proud of him because I do care about the young man, and I cheer for him, every other time that they play, just not this Saturday night.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Got anything?
All set. Thanks, Coach.
Great to see you, Scott. Thanks, Wags.
Good luck.
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate it.
Thanks.